Closing up on 2023 here, we have another good fight. This time coming in the 168-pound division as we got David Benavidez, the Mexican monster, taking on Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, as the winner is going to be next in line to fight the king, the undisputed champion of 168, Canelo Alvarez. The winner of this fight is put in a great position as there'll be no more questions. The winner of this has to get Canelo next. But first, they got to get through each other. Benavidez and Boo Boo have to fight and try and get through each other to get to that point where they can fight Canelo. It's going to be a tough fight. This one coming November 25th. This is going to be a tough one for both fighters. Benavidez coming off a great victory against Caleb Plant earlier this year. Boo Boo coming off a solid victory back in January. This will be his second fight at 168. We'll get into all of that. But both fighters will pose problems for one another as Boo Boo finally gets his shot at superstardom. Benavidez gets the shot to get Canelo. Benavidez gets through this fight, most certainly Canelo is on deck. But first, this is the Never Drop Podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure go ahead, like the video, press the subscribe button, comment who you think is going to win this fight. If you're listening on streaming platforms, go ahead and follow the Never Drop Podcast for all your boxing information, and then go over to YouTube and subscribe for me real quick. I appreciate it. Let's get to this fight. This is a good one. This is a really good fight. This honestly might be the best fight that could be made at 168 right now that doesn't involve Canelo, right? We had Plant versus Benavidez earlier this year, which that was a great fight. Benavidez separated himself from Plant. Plant and Benavidez both were the top echelon of 168 without being undisputed. Not right. Canelo's on one level, and then every other fighter starts a level below him. So at 168, Benavidez and Plant were on that one level below him, and they were trying to see, hey, who can climb up to try and challenge Canelo in his top level. Benavidez, we'll talk about this fight, got the best of Caleb, and instead of getting a Canelo fight, Canelo obviously fought Jermell Charlo in a battle of undisputeds, which was a clear and lopsided victory for Canelo as Charlo just couldn't come up and weight as much as he wanted to, and it was a blowout, to say the least. Instead of waiting until May, which is when Canelo says he will fight again, usually fights May and September, Benavidez says, let me erase any doubt that I should be the next guy up, that I'm the second in command here at 168. People have talked about Boo Boo, Demetrius Andrade, for a while. Here, let's sign the contracts. Let me get him out of here, and let me show, hey, Canelo, it's me. It's not anyone else at 168, it's me. Benavidez, I'll get into some quick stats right here. Benavidez, 27-0. 23 knockouts, has a great knockout percentage, couldn't get Caleb Plant out of there, and I think that's more props to Caleb. Benavidez was hitting him with some really hard shots, and to his credit, he stayed on his feet the entire fight. Benavidez 6'2", with a 74.5-inch reach. He's young, 26 years old. It's crazy to think he's only 26. Benavidez has a long time to go. I talked about his recent victory over Caleb Plant. That was a unanimous decision back on March 25th. Scorecards showed a 117-111 victory, a 116-112 victory, and a 115-113 victory. Really, it was a tale of two halves of the fight. The first half, Plant really established himself well, and we've seen it with Plant before. The second half of the fight, it looked like he gassed out. He faded. Benavidez was able to adapt, which we hadn't seen too much of because Benavidez has overpowered a lot of opponents, but he adapted very well in that fight. Realized, hey, Caleb's trying to box, and then anything on the inside, he's trying to tie me up. Benavidez said, okay, if you want to try and tie me up, I'm going to hit you when you try and tie me up. I'm not going to make it easy. And he kept hitting Plant and tiring out Plant, and eventually won round after round after round to score and win the unanimous decision in that fight. I thought, while of course we wanted to see the knockout, I thought it displayed a lot of boxing prowess and knowledge from Benavidez, being able to adapt and get that victory. We look at it, Benavidez had 210 total punches that fight. 180 of them were power shots, and he only landed 30 jabs. So when Benavidez connects, it's going to be with power. And that's something Boo Boo's going to have to be aware of. Boo Boo, coming in this fight, he's 32-0, 19 knockouts. I mentioned the young age of Benavidez. Well, it's the opposite for Boo Boo. He's 35. This is his first big fight, and we'll get a little into that as no one's really taking a chance going against Boo Boo. So this is why at 35, this is his big fight. This is his chance to say, hey, for the non-boxing fans, y'all need to pay attention to me. Height of 6 foot and a reach of 73.5 inches. So that puts Benavidez for both the reach and the height advantage. Again, I don't think that'll play too much of an effect in this fight because Benavidez, I don't believe, is just going to stand on the outside and box. if anyone's going to box from the outside, I think it would be more Boo Boo than Benavidez. But I mentioned Boo Boo's last fight. That was back in January. So both have fought earlier in 2023. Boo Boo's fight was against Damon Nicholson. That was on, I mentioned January, it was on the Gervonta Davis versus Hector Luis Garcia undercard. So if you watched that fight, bought the pay-per-view, you might have seen Boo Boo, right? I'm sure you saw Boo Boo. Scorecards were all shutouts. It was only a 10-round fight. It was 100-88 as Boo Boo put him down twice, once in the second round and once in the seventh. It was a little bit of a disappointment because it looked like Boo Boo should have got him out there. Boo Boo was kind of boxing, and it just looked like he never really put on the gas all the way. That felt like, hey, you should be able to get him out of here. You floored him twice, just put him away, and he just wasn't able to. I think some of his fatigue, he didn't have the usual amount of stamina. And again, that was his first fight at 168, so maybe he was more getting adjusted to the weight. But personally, I would have liked to see him get a stoppage in that fight because, like I mentioned, the scorecards, he was dominant all the way through. One moment to look out, though, that he wasn't dominant was the fifth round of that fight. It looked that he was knocked down by a body shot. The ref called it a slip. Just something to see in case Benavidez tries to work the body. Maybe he says it was, maybe in Benavidez's camp and Benavidez's mind was, hey, that wasn't a slip, so in this fight, I'm going to work the body and try and get him out, work the body, and if I can get him out with a body shot. Right, so that's just something to keep an eye on. Boo Boo, I mentioned, he undefeated 32-0, and he's never gotten that big fight. A lot of the reasons is because he has a very interesting skill set. If you watch the first All Access, I don't know if they're doing 1 or 2 episodes, but the All Access for this fight, his trainers even talk about, hey, Boo Boo saw when he was young the boxing book, How You Should Box, and threw it out the window and said, I'll do it my way, right? Boo Boo, for how tall he is, for how big he is, right? At 160, he was at 154, moved to 160, now he's at 168. He moves very well. That's the thing, he wants to hit and move. Kind of like a younger fighter, or a lighter fighter, at the lower weight divisions, 135, 140, 147 pounder, right? They're not going to just sit there and crack like the higher weight classes, right? They want to punch and move. They want different angles. And Boo Boo does that. He's a southpaw. So he's an awkward stance, and while southpaws in turn are awkward for some fighters, Boo Boo kind of, I don't know how to describe it, it's Boo Boo's style, right? It's awkward to him. That's how he fights. That's how he's made his stance. He's made his style. It's awkward. So that's when I talk about he wants to hit and move. That's part of the awkward style. He wants to keep moving, keep going, find different angles to hit you. He has good speed. That's one thing I saw in the January fight. I didn't think his speed was great, and that might have just been the stamina. And I think he had a previous long layoff before that. So I think with the weight, stamina, the speed wasn't all the way there, but I think it'll be there for this fight, as I've been seeing him train, and it looks like he's training as hard as he should be for his biggest fight of his career, right? So I think Boo Boo's going to pose some problems. I think Boo Boo is going to kind of be like Caleb Plant, as where Caleb was outboxing Benavidez for a while, at least in that start. He was the better boxer. And then Benavidez, like I said, adjusted, turned it around. It was able to do what he had to do. But I think Boo Boo can cause some problems for Benavidez boxing-wise, as he's a bigger guy, and if he has power, and say Benavidez feels his power, that might be huge to be able to keep him off of him. I'm talking about Benavidez off of Boo Boo, and Boo Boo trying to box from the outside. I think that would be huge for Boo Boo. But quickly, before I finish talking about the main event, giving my predictions, I want to talk about the co-main. We're going to see the return of Jermall Charlo, Jermel's brother, his twin brother, back in the ring against Benavidez's older brother, Jose Benavidez Jr. This one's interesting. And honestly, I was looking at it, trying to predict who I think will win this fight, and I can't tell. And that's really because Jose Benavidez Jr. is hungry. He needs a victory in this fight, or else his boxing career continues to hit sort of a plummet, right? He's had some tough losses back in 2018 against Terrence Crawford, lost in 2022 to Danny Garcia. He needs a victory. Jermall Charlo hasn't fought since June of 2021, but we know when Charlo's in the ring, he's dangerous. 32-0, 22 knockouts. For the longest time, people were thinking Jermall Charlo was the better Charlo twin. And then he had battles with mental health and different things, and Jermell just skyrocketed at 154. So I don't know who's exactly going to win this fight or how they're going to do, because we haven't seen Maul Charlo in forever. and Jose Benavidez Jr. is going to do whatever he needs to win this fight. I do know it's going to be some fireworks, as the virtual press conference they had, both fighters were going heavy at each other. Benavidez Jr. was taking some shots at Charlo's mental health, saying things like, don't make excuses and pull out of this fight, different things like that, while Charlo was making fun of Benavidez Jr. getting shot back in 2016, I believe back in his hometown. Both fighters were going hard at each other, and you could tell that they don't like each other necessarily, and they need to do whatever they need to do to get this win. So while I don't have a prediction exactly for this fight, I'm really interested to see what and how each fighter fights and who comes out on top, because both fighters need it. I'm excited for this co-main, but that's the co-main. The main event, my prediction, and who I believe will be next in line to fight Canelo Alvarez at 168 for his undisputed title. I'm rolling with the Mexican Monster here by the late stoppage. While I talked about Boo Boo having some skills that can seriously, especially boxing-wise, stutter and confuse Benavidez, I think this plays out a lot to the Caleb Plant fight, and I alluded to that a little bit earlier. I think Boo Boo will start the fight and box really well. I truly do believe that. But again, and if it wasn't for the Caleb Plant fight, I might not think this way. But now that I've seen Benavidez make adjustments in the ring, I think he'll make an adjustment, see how Boo Boo's fighting, and then the second half of the fight, he'll just dominate. I don't believe Boo Boo's power will be enough to keep Benavidez off of him. I think those power shots will begin to take a toll on Boo Boo, who's, again, 35 years old. I think it'll just be a lot for him, and Benavidez will get some of those combos off that we've seen, those rapid-fire combos. You see like 8 punches in them. And I think Boo Boo, later in this fight, it'll be a stoppage. I don't know if it'll be a TKO or a knockout. I think it'll be a stoppage, and Benavidez will claim victory and become the guy that Canelo has to face at 168. I just see Benavidez, again, not respecting the power of Boo Boo and being able to just walk him down and throw whatever he needs to throw at Boo Boo. And eventually get that stoppage, a stoppage that he wanted for that Plant fight but wasn't able to get. I think he gets it here and sends a message to Canelo, the king at 168. You got to fight me. We're on the same promotion company. You got to fight me. You got 2 more fights on your contract. It's me, right? That's my prediction. I think the Mexican Monster, David Benavidez, defeats Demetrius Andrade. I think it's going to be a good fight. I think we're going to see good boxing-wise, good power shots. I think overall it's going to be a really good fight. And again, boxing just keeps doing it. It's setting us up for some good fights, some great fights in 2024 or 2024. Because Benavidez versus Canelo versus Benavidez, now that is a fight that every boxing fan wants to see. It's up to Boo Boo, though, to say, hey, not so fast. I'm here. And I like Boo Boo. I can't even lie. Watching him in the All Access, I'm happy he has this shot. He seems like a happy guy, extremely excited to have this shot. And I really like his character, how he presents himself, how he comes across. But another reason I'm picking Benavidez is I think experience. Benavidez had that experience against Caleb Plant. I think the moment might be a little too big. Or not too big, but the moment will be big for Boo Boo walking out to that ring. I think he might be a little shocked, right? Again, this is first big challenge fight at 35 years old. I think he might be a little overwhelmed and just he doesn't have the experience that Benavidez has in this big fight magnitude. And Benavidez knows where he wants to be. He knows where he wants to go. That's why he signed the contract and said, let me fight Boo Boo. Let me get him out of here, because he knows the path he wants to go to and who he needs to eliminate. And this is all a part of the plan for Benavidez. Is Boo Boo, he's looking at it, hey, this is my first time. We'll see what happens next. I think Benavidez is just a man on a mission right now, and that mission is a fight against Canelo at 168. This has been the Never Drop Podcast. I appreciate you all for listening, tuning in, listen to this breakdown, preview of the fight. Make sure you like it, share it with your friends, like, comment, subscribe here on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter, Backman Sports. Follow on streaming platforms, wherever you're listening to, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. Go ahead and do that. It's going to be a good fight. Winner gets Canelo. We need to see that fight happen next. I got Benavidez by late stoppage. Let me know in the comments who you got. Other than that, that's all I got for you. Peace. I'm out.